One of the many advantages of using a hardware synthesizer or hardware keyboard is that it's really easy to get to all their different sound presets. Usually they have a way to sort things via category, like piano, key, bass, strings, etc., and variations inside of those categories. I'm going to show you a really cool way to do that inside of Ableton with your favorite VSTs and Ableton devices. We're going to accomplish this technique using nested selectors, or what I like to call multiplex selectors. We're actually selecting between a different bunch of selectors. It's a lot of selecting, but I'll show you how it works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a blank instrument rack on a blank instrument track inside of Ableton, or a blank MIDI track inside of Ableton. On side of this blank MIDI track, I'm going to go ahead and first open up my chains selector here. And I'm going to right click on my chain selector and make sure that this is mapped to macro 1. Now that I have that mapped to macro 1, I'm going to choose 5 different instruments inside of a category. For this, I'm going to go ahead and use just 5 synth leads. Those first 5 sound fine. So I'll take these and I'll drag each one into this area here inside of the chain selection area. You can, of course, select your sounds a little bit more carefully. But for this example, I'm just going to show you the quick and dirty way. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these chains, either by clicking and shift clicking on the bottom one or hitting Command A. I'm going to take now these selection ranges and drag them out so that all of them cover all of basically every range on the chain selector. And what's going to happen is if we move this chain selector, we're actually going to be moving the selection here, which is going to select between the different instrument we want. And right now the way we have this set is no matter where we have this chain selector, I actually have this knob maps to a knob on my MIDI controller. No matter where I move this chain selector, we're hearing everything. I'll go ahead and right click on this and hit distribute ranges equally. Now I can select, and you'll notice that as I select through this, it's actually selecting between all 5 different instruments, right? And so if I play this, so that gives me access to all 5 of those instruments. Now, if I want more than 5 instruments or 5 categories of instruments, here's an easy way to do that. I'm going to go ahead and rename the rack, whatever this is, and in this case this is going to be synth leads. Then I'll go ahead and take this and save this inside of a folder somewhere in one of my libraries here. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the same process over again. In fact, now that I've saved the rack, I can just delete these chains here and start from the same rack that I've used. Once I've done that for 5 different categories, it seems to work best if you have the same amount of categories that you have variations. In this case, I use 5 different variations for each of the 5 categories. You can use 6x6, 7x7, 8x8, all the way up to 128 by 128. I've found that 5x5 is a great sweet spot for performance, quick selection in a live environment, and enough variety to get me going. Now I'm going to use the same exact technique that I used before with these selectors. So I'm going to take my brass selector, drag it in here, but there's going to be one change to the way this works. Every time I drag in a rack, I'm going to right click and I'm going to map these chain selectors to macro number 2. Same thing with my hammer and pluck rack, map to macro 2. Same thing with my piano and key rack, map to macro 2. Same thing with my synth keys rack, map to macro 2. And same thing with my synth lead rack, map the selector to macro 2. Now, We'll do the same thing with our selectors for each of our selector category racks, and I'll drag this out, right-click, distribute ranges equally. Now what's going to happen is when I move this top rack, I'm going to select between my different categories, and when I then change this chain selector inside the second knob, it's going to change between the selectors inside the second rack. I can go ahead and actually, I think, close that there so we can see a little bit better. This is how this is going to work. I'll go ahead and show you right now. Now once you have this, you can go ahead and launch any rhythm track you have and go ahead and jam away. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it makes your live performance or studio sessions a little bit faster. And I hope you guys have fun jamming. For more tips, tutorials, tricks, or even a more personalized learning experience, head on over to MatthewRayMusic.com. Thanks so much for watching.